The dessert remained in the cooling box, untouched. He had purchased it himself. A colossal red velvet, the kind she typically begged him not to get as it disrupted her sleep, but she wasn't pleased when she handed him the container. She simply stated, "Before you unpack that, there's one more thing." She placed a paper folder on it. Beige, neat, official. "Don't spoil this," she added, receding like she had deactivated an explosive. He assumed it was possibly a card, a deeply heartfelt letter about the recent struggles, how they could mend things, possibly seek assistance from others, perhaps a revelation. But inside were official documents. The phrase "request for severance of union" glared at him, stoic and indifferent. They appeared to be from someone else's existence. "I've already authorized it," she noted, pointing at the final section. "Only you remain. No caution, no conflict, no milestone of errors. Just finished." She didn't weep. Neither did he. Instead, he questioned, "Why today?" Her tone barely broke when she responded, "Because it's the singular occasion you'd recall." She pivoted and proceeded down the corridor. No luggage, no brief container, simply her vehicle starters and a bag that seemed excessively empty. The portal sealed, and momentarily, he believed he had departed. Not metaphorically. He means, his complexion turned chilly. His ears began vibrating. He was so immobile, even the residents seemed perplexed. That folder might as well have housed a demise record because whatever he believed they were, whatever he believed he was, just lapsed before him. He reclined, not on a seat, on the floor. He stared at the dessert, contemplated ingesting it, contemplated discarding it, contemplated contacting someone, but he didn't stir. Hours passed. Eventually, the sunlight vanished, and he didn't perceive it. His cellular device vibrated. Then once more, 10 times overall. 10 unanswered dialogues from individuals he hadn't conversed with in months, perhaps years. Associates, ancient companions, her kin. Curiously, each of them left a recorded transmission. Each one altered everything. He didn't listen to the recorded transmissions instantly. Initially, he simply stared at the indicator. 10 fresh exchanges, all from digits he barely identified or had overlooked even were present. He assumed it was possibly a malfunction. Possibly something had occurred to her. And this was all a component of an unhealthy misconception. Possibly someone had demised, and this was her distorted method of managing sadness. But then he pressed activate. The initial recorded transmission was from Silas, an individual he used to commute alongside when he operated nights in Hammond. He hadn't seen him in almost 4 rotations. He sounded doubtful. "Hey, Levi, unsure if this is still your digit, but listen, I'm unaware if you and Bella are still joined, but I observed her last weekend, and I believed you should be aware. Never mind. Disregard it." He ceased speaking before completing. His stomach churned. That alone would have kept him alert throughout the night, but he persisted in listening. Recorded transmission number 2 was from Bella's kin, Eliza, the one she used to label an excitement killer. "Levi, I didn't desire to interfere, but she's been misleading you for rotations. You should examine the lodging costs in the estate in Southport. If you persist in believing the assembly in Miami was genuine." "I'm sorry, but it wasn't." He released the device. Didn't gently set it down. Released it. Southport. They didn't possess any land there. They barely maintained their mortgage as it was. The third exchange was briefer, simply a male's tone he didn't recognize. "She's not who you assume she is, and she's not finished yet." Then a click. He activated the remainder of them on speaker, ambling around the culinary space like a phantom. The exchanges blurred into each other. Personalities from the past cautioning him about the present. Her workmates, an ancient neighbor, even someone from her exercise center, a female who barely knew him but still possessed sufficient conscience to declare, "You merit knowing what she's performing when you assume she's in Pilates." But the 10th exchange, that one paralyzed him. It was his sibling's tone, Wyatt. They hadn't conversed in nearly a rotation, not following that Thanksgiving disaster when he accused Bella of being a manipulator and exited dinner in a storm. He defended her, informed him he was embittered and doubtful, shut him out, obstructed him, but now here he was. "Levi, I'm aware I'm probably the singular individual you desire to hear from, but I've been withholding this for too extended. I should have notified you rotations ago. There's a man named Asher. Works at some boutique agency near Broad Ripple. She's been observing him without your awareness, and I'm not surmising. I shadowed them. I observed it myself. I possess photographic documentation." He paused, then declared something he'd never forget. She informed him she was simply awaiting your natal day to render it authorized. Declared it would be representative. She even chuckled regarding it. He reclined on the floor once more. Identical location. Identical chili tiling beneath his limbs. This occasion, he didn't stare at dessert. He stared at himself mirrored in the dark display of the cooker. He didn't weep. He didn't scream. He simply remained exceptionally immobile. And then for the initial occasion in rotations, he permitted a segment of himself to pose the query he constantly drove deeply down. Had he genuinely ever known her at all? The peculiar element was the discomfort didn't arrive in a singular massive surge like he anticipated. It arrived in minor, humiliating undulations. The instance he compensated for her weekend escape while skipping his dental procedure. The Sabbath mornings he prepared her beverage before her virtual gatherings. The manner in which she'd return from assemblies with brand new footwear and declare she discovered them on clearance. All of it. Misrepresentations layered over misrepresentations wrapped in grins and refined with empty kisses. The man he was that forenoon, the one seated at the culinary table in natal slumberware, anticipating tenderness. He had been lifeless prolonged before the documents arrived. She simply selected an occasion to bury him. But the most peculiar element, as he sat there, 10 recorded transmissions scorched into his recollection. He didn't sense indignation yet. He sensed a challenge because if she was intending to select that occasion to conclude him, then he was intending to select that identical occasion to commence anew. She assumed he possessed no worth. It was occasion to demonstrate how incorrect she was, and it only necessitated 10 dialogues to accomplish it. He didn't slumber that night. He lay on the divan, not because he was excessively heartbroken to ascend into the bed, but because the bed sensed like hers. Everything did. The beverage apparatus, the scent of eucalyptus in the lavatory, even the damn throw bolsters she insisted they acquire last Yuletide. It all whispered her designation like some brutal lullaby. By 6 a.m., he was still entirely alert, his physique drained, but his intellect a tempest. He couldn't cease contemplating what Eliza had declared in her recorded transmission. The estate in Southport. That wasn't simply an inconsequential detail. That was something he could authenticate. Thus, he commenced excavating. He knew she employed the identical 3 passcodes for everything. He'd known it for rotations. A fusion of her ancient collegiate identification, her canine's designation from youth, and the numeral 14, which now that he contemplated it, was his natal day. Within 15 moments, he was in her electronic correspondence. There were hundreds of unread electronic messages, most of them promotions, customer bookings, subscriptions, but he filtered by keywords. Southport lease, rental accord, and there it was, allocated digital lease accord from 4 rotations ago. She had listed herself and another inhabitant, Asher S., not her sibling, not a kin, simply Asher S. They were dividing the fee, $2,600 monthly. The deposit was compensated from their combined ledger. He sensed like someone impacted him directly in the chest. Not because she was disloyal. He already knew that. But because she employed his funds to construct her new existence with someone else before she even notified him theirs was concluded. He didn't shout. He didn't strike a divider. He simply sat there stunned by the audacity. The chilly, calculated timeline. The manner in which she established all of this like it was a project blueprint. Her departure strategy had footnotes and schedule invites. He replicated the lease onto a universal serial bus drive. He wasn't certain why, part survival instinct, part something else he couldn't designate yet. Then he contacted the proprietor. He didn't anticipate him to respond, but he did. Groaning and probably partially through a pastry. Yeah, he murmured. He introduced himself, informed him he had some queries regarding the Southport estate. He paused. Are you Asher? No, I'm Levi, Bella's spouse. Prolonged silence. Then he exhaled like a man who knew this occasion was approaching. Ah, that clarifies a great deal. He didn't provide him with details. He could perceive he was anxious. But he permitted one element to slip that altered everything. They've already relocated in 2 rotations ago. That signified she relocated in before the severance documents. She was slumbering in that location, probably adjacent to him, while he was still bringing her midday repast during her extended operating hours. He concluded the dialogue and reclined, heart-thumping with something that wasn't entirely rage. Not yet, but also wasn't sadness anymore. Then he performed something he never envisioned he'd perform. He navigated there. He didn't know what he was anticipating to discover. Closure, evidence, some grotesque sensation of inquisitiveness to observe the man she'd substituted him with. The edifice was pristine, contemporary, far exceeding what they could afford without straining. They possessed a private garage, a rooftop veranda. Not a vestige of their existence visible. He stationed himself across the boulevard and waited. 20 moments elapsed. Then he observed her. Bella emerged donning sunglasses and a ponytail, dressed casually, no cosmetic application, no elevated footwear, no deception. She appeared younger, lighter. She appeared like someone who hadn't simply ripped the soul from a union. And behind her, barefoot, carrying a conveyance beverage tray, was a man. Towering, shaggy hair, effortless grin. Asheress. They entered his vehicle. He leaned over and kissed her on the cheek before activating the engine like it was the most organic element globally. He didn't shadow. He couldn't. Instead, he sat there immobile, observing them vanish in tandem like a scene from a cinematic creation he'd been excised from. It was peculiar. He didn't detest her. Not yet. What he sensed was worse. He sensed replaceable. Like all those rotations signified nothing. Like he was simply a placeholder until the appropriate man arrived. And for the initial occasion, he began to ponder, was this genuinely simply betrayal? Or had he been a personality in someone else's narrative this entire duration? And if so, who the hell was he outside of her? He should have proceeded homeward. Instead, he navigated to the financial institution. He sat in the parking region for a while, observing individuals move in and out like everything was normal, like someone's spouse hadn't simply employed her spouse's funds to lease a love sanctuary. When he eventually entered, the administrator recognized him. They'd inaugurated their combined ledger 10 rotations ago, back when they were simply commencing, idealistic, penniless, foolishly infatuated. He even recalled Bella jesting that she'd only remain united to him if he never overdraw more than twice annually. He should have known even then affection for her was a contract with stipulations. He requested to examine their recent assertions. He necessitated more than the lease. He necessitated the complete depiction, the numerals that would affirm the timeline. The tranquil larceny without his awareness. There it was. 5 transfers, each for precisely $2,000, all labeled as consulting dues, all to the identical ledger. Initially, he assumed it was business. But the ledger pertained to a man designated Adrian C. Hudson, not Asher S., not a workmate, not anyone he'd ever overheard of. He requested the administrator if he could acquire a printout of simply those 5 transactions. She paused, declared she'd have to verify with Bella since it was a shared ledger, but he must have appeared so vanquished, so empty, she simply printed them without inquiring. He took the pages and departed. Adrian C. Hudson. The designation circled in his intellect the entire journey homeward. When he arrived there, he searched it. Initially, nothing. Then he appended Indianapolis to the query. Success. An art director freelance, recently tagged in photographic documentation from a private gallery inauguration. And in one of those pictures, barely cropped from the frame, was Bella's scarf. He knew it. He acquired it for her natal day 2 rotations ago. He clicked on the photographer's profile and messaged him, didn't even hesitate. Hey, random query. Do you know the guy in this photo? Adrian, attempting to establish contact. He responded 20 moments later. Yeah, I perform his branding work. He's somewhat of a strange dude. You his broker or something? He informed him he was his former accountant, which wasn't an absolute misrepresentation. He had definitely funded his lifestyle at this juncture. He provided him with an electronic correspondence. He wasn't certain what he was intending to declare. He had no genuine blueprint, but he composed something brief and strange, like his entire existence at that instant. Adrian, we may possess a female in common. I don't desire to conflict. I desire a dialogue. He replied an hour later. What's her designation? He dispatched back one term. Bella. The dots emerged almost instantaneously. You're her spouse. He blinked. Wait, you didn't know about me? I assumed she was divorced already. He sat there staring at that concluding message as the concluding puzzle fragment twisted into position. She was manipulating him, too. The Asher situation wasn't a fluke. It wasn't even an isolated affair. This wasn't regarding her succumbing to someone else. This was a pattern, a game. She had multiple males, each believing they were the core of her world. Each of them probably handing over funds, duration, fragments of themselves, and all of them deceived by the identical grin, the identical tone, the identical expert choreography. But then Adrian messaged anew. She informed me she departed you last autumn. She declared you were restraining, emotionally unstable, that you screamed at her in public, that you threatened to ruin her vocation. None of that's accurate, is it? He didn't reply. He didn't necessitate defending himself to him. Instead, he simply dispatched one photograph. The severance paper she'd provided him on his natal day, still within with the occasion clearly visible in the corner, May 14th. Then he wrote, she was still united to me 5 days ago. No response. Not for an hour. Then, meet me tomorrow. If you're serious, I possess something you necessitate observing. He didn't know what that signified. He didn't know if it was a snare or a peculiar form of masculine bonding or some mutual humiliation session, but he declared yes because whatever this mess was, he was concluded being the tranquil fool in the corner. It was occasion someone activated the illuminations in Bella's residence of mirrors. They convened at a location neither of them pertained in. A rundown eatery simply off Interstate 65 where the 4 mica counters were chipped. The atmosphere smelled of fryer fluid and detergent, and the singular individuals inside were truck operators excessively exhausted to care who overheard their dilemmas. It was neutral terrain, anonymous. Adrian arrived 10 moments tardy. He recognized him the instant he entered, not because he'd observed his photograph online, but because he appeared like someone who'd been misled by the identical female he had. That appearance isn't something you counterfeit. It's hollow, but sharp around the boundaries. He carried a black messenger container and averted eye contact until he slid into the cubicle across from him. No handshake, simply a nod. She informed me you were an alcoholic, he stated quietly, as if still attempting to reconcile what he was observing. He didn't respond. He simply observed him unzip the container and extract a binder. He slid it across the counter. Everything's in there, he stated. Screens, messages, financial institution transfers, some tone mementos, material she dispatched me. Material she didn't know I kept. He inaugurated the binder with hands that didn't sense like his. Inside were printed screenshots of textual content, all between him and Bella. Some from rotations ago, some from simply 2 weeks back. And he recognized the tone instantly. The manner in which she flattered, the manner in which she twisted phrases just sufficiently to sound like emotional closeness without genuinely declaring anything. She informed Adrian the identical material she informed him in the commencement, verbatim. I've never since observed like this before. I believe I'm eventually emancipated. My spouse never bolstered me, not like you do. He persisted in flipping through. Then came the receipts. Uber rides she attributed to a shared ledger. Dinner tabs signed in her maiden designation. Then the audio. Adrian handed him a pair of inexpensive earbuds and queued up a recording on his device. I didn't intend to record it, he stated. But we were in the vehicle, and I impacted tone memento by accident. She was on the phone with someone, another guy. You can overhear it. He pressed activate. Initially, simply static. Then Bella's tone. Light, flirtatious, barely above a whisper. You don't necessitate fretting regarding him. He's harmless, emotionally gentle. He folds when I necessitate him to. A pause. I'm still extracting from the shared ledger. He hasn't caught on yet. As soon as it's depleted, I'll finalize the documents. Then laughter. He extracted the earbuds. Do you know who she was conversing with? He questioned, his tone lower than he anticipated. He shook his head. No, but it wasn't me. So there was a third one, or fourth, or who knows. At this juncture, they were simply dots on her chessboard. Males who believed they were kings when genuinely they were pawns she slid into location for convenience. And yet, the worst segment wasn't that she disloyal. It was that she performed it so comfortably, so professionally, as if betrayal was her fluency. I loved her, Adrian stated, observing out the window. And I'm not ashamed of that. But I can't keep pretending she's simply broken. She's perilous. He turned back to him. She informed me she had a blueprint, that she was constructing her future with the appropriate man this occasion. I assumed it was me, but now I don't even believe she cares who the man is, as long as he provides her with what she desires. He didn't declare much following that. He departed first, handing him the binder like it was a file in a court instance neither of them had requested to be a segment of. He remained in the cubicle prolonged following he was gone. He ordered beverage he didn't ingest. He observed rainfall commence to blur the parking region outside. And for the initial occasion in his existence, he posed himself a query he'd never dared to before. What if Bella wasn't broken? What if she was simply proficient at this? Because it was becoming increasingly obvious. He wasn't the singular man she had deceived, but he might be the singular one remaining with evidence. And that signified one element. She'd be approaching for him next. 3 days elapsed following the gathering with Adrian, and silence hung over everything like a gas emission. You can't observe it, but you know it's going to explode. He didn't textual content Bella. She didn't contact him either. He didn't anticipate her to. He figured she was excessively preoccupied pivoting to her next casualty or rewriting the narrative. But what he didn't anticipate was the electronic correspondence, not from her, but from his supervisor. Subject header: necessitate to converse urgently. He assumed possibly they necessitated documents for payroll or something minor. But when he entered his office, he was pale. Portable computer open. A screenshot pulled up, and in it, a paragraph composed by his spouse, dispatched from her personal ledger to his entire department. The electronic correspondence accused him of emotional abuse, declared he was volatile, erratic, deeply unstable, claimed he had a pattern of manipulation, that he made perilous threats following she requested a severance. She stated she was concerned for her safety and desired it on record in the event she necessitated involving authorities. He could barely declare. His supervisor didn't declare much. He simply observed him with a fusion of apprehension and bewilderment, like he was attempting to determine if he was who he believed he was. "Levi," he stated quietly, "do I necessitate to be apprehensive regarding this?" All he could perform was shake his head. He informed him it wasn't accurate, that they were separating, sure, but he'd never placed a hand on her, never even elevated his tone, that she was the one who blindsided him, that she had other males, misrepresentations, layers of deceit. He didn't respond to that. He simply sighed and sealed the portable computer. He departed operating early. Not because he was in difficulty, at least not officially, but because he realized something terrifying. She wasn't simply concluding the union. She was erasing him, substituting the genuine him with a version she could regulate even following walking out the door. In the worst segment, some individuals would believe her because the initial tone individuals overhear is often the one that sticks. And she had discharged the initial shot publicly, strategically. He wasn't indignant. He was dismantled. His identity, not simply as a spouse, but as a personality, was now under query. And the weapon she employed, terms, simply terms, so pristine, so damaging. That night, he sat at his culinary counter, identical location, identical silence, and inaugurated the binder Adrian had provided him anew. He necessitated to contemplate like her. If she was laying groundwork, that signified she was apprehensive of him, of what he possessed. And that provided him something back he didn't even know he'd misplaced. Leverage. He uploaded everything Adrian provided him. Audio texts, screenshots, receipts. He established a private folder online, passcode protected. Then he appended his own, their combined financial institution assertions, the lease to the Southport estate, copies of her business electronic messages he backed up rotations ago without even contemplating. Not because he desired retribution. He didn't. He desired truth, evidence. He necessitated something solid in the event this proceeded legal. And a segment of him, he conceded, desired her to know he wasn't the fool she believed he was. Then he contacted the singular personality who might still be neutral. Eliza, her kin, the one who left the recorded transmission regarding the lodging. She responded following 2 vibrations. He didn't inquire how she was. He didn't waste duration. She dispatched an electronic correspondence to my operating, labeled me abusive. Eliza didn't sound surprised. She exhaled, not shocked, not outraged, simply exhausted. She stated she'd perform that, Eliza stated quietly. She informed her maternal figure you were intending to smear her, thus, she had to progress ahead of it. She contemplates if she regulates the version of you individuals over here, she wins. He sensed his throat constrict. Why would she perform this? Following everything? Eliza paused. Because if she's not the casualty, she necessitates being the villain. And Bella is not the kind of female who survives being the villain. They were both silent for a while. Then he inquired, did she ever love me? Eliza's tone didn't break, but it turned to glass. I contemplate she loved how much you loved her. And when that wasn't sufficient, she commenced accumulating new hearts like trophies. He leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling, and permitted those terms to land. This wasn't simply betrayal. This was reputation arson. She wasn't departing him. She was ensuring no one else ever desired him anew. A slow, elegant social execution. But he had something she didn't know yet, and it wasn't a folder. It was clarity. And with that, he knew this narrative wasn't concluded, not by a lengthy shot. He waited 4 days before he performed anything, not because he was frightened, though he was, but because he necessitated duration to contemplate like her. Bella didn't perform for reconciliation. She performed for narrative. And if she desired to convert his silence into guilt, he would employ her noise as fuel. He composed something he never contemplated he would, not a blog entry, not a textual content, an open correspondence, simply 3 pages, 1 tone, no rage, no poison, simply facts. He labeled it as segment of the narrative, and he didn't post it anonymously. He signed his complete designation, uploaded screenshots of financial transfers, included tone logs with identifying timestamps. He blurred Adrian's designation, but quoted his terms with authorization. He rendered it personal, yes, but not emotional. He didn't paint her as a monster. He didn't beg for pity. He informed individuals how it commenced, how he discovered out, and what he discovered. And then he posted it on Reddit initially, then LinkedIn, then Medium. He didn't anticipate traction. He simply necessitated his tone to exist somewhere beyond her version. He left comments off, no debates, no drama, simply light. It blew up by noontime. Hundreds of views, then thousands. Former colleagues shared it. One of her ancient classmates, someone he'd never encountered, messaged him declaring, "I always pondered how she escaped with it. Now I know." That night, he received an electronic correspondence from their ancient couples therapist. She hadn't observed them in 2 rotations, but she stated she recalled their sessions vividly. She wrote, "I always knew something was off. You kept attempting. She kept performing. It should have sensed like victory." But then came the genuine twist. He was walking out of the grocer's that identical night when a man approached him in the parking region. Hoodie up, sunglasses. He moved with a strange mix of anxious energy and calculated calm. "Levi?" he inquired. He tensed. "Yeah." He pulled off the sunglasses. His face was weirdly familiar, though he didn't recognize him. "My designation's Silas," he stated. "You don't know me, but I know your spouse." He didn't speak, simply observed him. He continued, "She dated my sibling last rotation while she was still with you." His designation was Carter. She informed him she was divorced, that you were abusive, that she was rebuilding her existence. He believed her. She relocated into his location for 6 rotations. He swallowed. 6 rotations? He nodded. Then she vanished, left a notation declaring she necessitated focusing on herself. Carter discovered out a rotation later that she'd already relocated in with someone else, different guy, identical narrative. His limbs were locked in location, like he'd been cemented to the asphalt. He pulled out his device and demonstrated him a photograph. Bella smiling at some event, her hand wrapped around a man who appeared uncannily like him, similar build, similar hair, identical kind of laughter in his eyes. "She possesses a type," Silas muttered, "males who remind her of you, or possibly males who substitute you just sufficiently." He stood there stunned. It wasn't simply the disloyalty, it was the precision, the replication. She was constructing versions of him elsewhere, in other existences, other metropolises, other misrepresentations. Like she necessitated his face, but not his soul. And then Silas stated something that landed like a steel beam across the back of his neck. She labeled him Levi once by accident. His heart dropped. He looked him in the eye. "She's not attempting to erase you. She's attempting to recreate you over and over in someone easier to manipulate." He doesn't recall how he proceeded homeward that night. He recalls the wind through the window, the boulevard illuminations, but not the drive itself. His intellect was somewhere else, stuck on that one haunting idea. What if she doesn't desire freedom? What if she simply desires to possess a softer version of him again and again? When he entered, his device vibrated, a private digit. He responded. Bella's tone was calm, excessively calm. "You've had your enjoyment," she stated. "Take it down." He didn't answer. She continued, "I possess a legal representative now. Keep slandering me, and I'll ensure your designation is buried in litigation for rotations. You'll misplace everything. Your occupation, your insurance, your apartment. Is that what you desire?" Still, he didn't speak, because in that instant, he realized something. She wasn't contacting him because she was frightened of misplacing her dignity. She was contacting because for the initial occasion in her existence, she was apprehensive of misplacing control. And control was all she'd ever genuinely loved. Her threat rang in his ears all night, not because he believed she could ruin him, but because it proved how little she'd altered. When charm failed, she weaponized apprehension. And when apprehension wasn't sufficient, she threatened to drag him through a war he never even desired to conflict. But by that forenoon, he wasn't frightened anymore. He had something she couldn't reach anymore: perspective. He took a promenade through the vicinity, the identical boulevards where she and he once jogged, hand in hand, pretending they were superior to what they were, the identical corner where she stated she desired offspring, the identical front porch where they sat one summer, promising they'd mature old in tandem, misrepresentations wrapped in candle illuminations. He ceased before the postal receptacle, holding an envelope he'd been staring at all forenoon, the signed severance documents. This occasion, He wasn't hesitating. He dropped them in and didn't look back. Later that day, he convened with a legal representative, a good one, calm, focused. He reviewed everything he had, the folder, the financial evidence, the recordings, and stated one sentence he'd never forget. "You're not in a conflict, you're in a transition. Let me handle the conflict." He left his office sensing 20 pounds lighter. That identical night, he received a textual content from Adrian. She relocated out of the Southport estate. No forwarding address, vanished again. Then Eliza contacted. She sounded relieved. "You concluded it, didn't you?" "Yeah," he stated, "for genuine this occasion." And then she stated something that almost rendered him break. "Levi, I hope you know none of this defines you. You were simply the singular one potent sufficient to stand still while she came undone." Weeks elapsed. The open correspondence remained up. She never sued. She never apologized either. He didn't anticipate her to. She wasn't built for truth. She was built for exit strategies and illusion. But he ceased awaiting closure from her, because closure didn't arrive in a textual content or a revelation. It arrived the day he stepped into his new apartment, a small location, nothing elegant, but his, and unpacked the concluding container without contemplating her once. It arrived when he picked up the device and contacted his sibling, Wyatt, following everything, following the conflict, following the silence. And all he stated was, "You were accurate." He didn't gloat. He simply stated, "You still possess duration to compose a superior chapter." And he believed him. It arrived when he commenced performing material he used to adore before she requested him to tone them down. Sketching, late-night promenades, strange jazz playlists no one else understood. He even commenced assistance from others, not because he was broken, but because he desired to ensure he never gave his tone away anew. And most surprisingly, it arrived in the form of a female he encountered at a bookstore 2 rotations later. Her designation's Juliet. She didn't inquire regarding his past on the initial occasion. She didn't necessitate a dramatic narrative. She simply smiled like he was someone worth knowing, not someone who necessitated mending or proving. She liked that he was tranquil, stated it rendered her feel secure, and for the initial occasion in what sense like rotations, he believed someone meant that. So, here he is now, rotations later, no longer attempting to regain something that was never genuine, no longer apprehensive of who believes what. And if you're reading this because someone left you in the soil and dared to label it your tomb, let him state this clearly. You are not the worst element someone stated regarding you without your awareness. You are not the narrative they're declaring without your authorization.